In the middle of a shareholder meeting, my wife suddenly stood up and accused me of embezzlement. She waved what she called evidence and demanded I sign a resignation letter on the spot, right in front of the board, the investors, everyone. 20 years of building that company collapsed in less than 10 minutes. Security was ordered to cut my system access. I was escorted out of my own headquarters like a criminal. But the real shock came moments later. The man who stepped up to replace me, the newly announced interim CEO, wasn't some neutral executive. He was her lover. What they didn't know was that I stayed silent on purpose. While they celebrated, I investigated. I uncovered how she manipulated greedy shareholders with promises of massive profits, inflated stock values, and bribed members of internal oversight to legitimize my removal. I collected accounting records, internal emails, warehouse camera footage, and transfer schedules, all pointing to one thing: company assets being funneled into shell companies under her relatives' names. At the same time, I met privately with undecided shareholders and showed them the truth. If her plan succeeded, the company would be stripped bare, and they would be the next victims. If you want to see how this ends, how patience beats betrayal, and how the truth turns the tables, subscribe to the channel now. Stories like this aren't just entertainment, they're warnings. Don't miss what comes next. I walked into the office early, like I always did, and the building was still half asleep. The elevators were quiet. The lobby smelled like fresh coffee and floor cleaner. From my corner suite in downtown Houston, I could see the freeway already filling up. Cars sliding past each other like they had somewhere more important to be. It wasn't a glamorous view. It was just normal. And I liked normal. 20 years in this business teaches you to appreciate the ordinary parts. The parts where nothing is on fire. The parts where your phone isn't vibrating every 30 seconds. I checked my calendar, reviewed the agenda for tomorrow's shareholder meeting, and skimmed the latest sales numbers. Everything looked solid. Boring even. The kind of boring that keeps people employed. Around 10, my assistant poked her head in. "Mr. Carter, Sabrina called. She said you didn't answer her last 2 texts." I didn't look up. "Tell her I'm in meetings. I'll call her after lunch." The truth was, I'd seen her messages. She'd been sending them all week. Short, sharp questions. "Who's voting with you? Did you talk to Mason yet? Are you sure the board still respects you?" Questions that didn't sound like concern. They sounded like strategy. By the time I got home that evening, the house smelled like garlic and roasted chicken. Sabrina was at the stove, hair pulled back, humming like everything was fine. She turned, flashed that bright smile she used when she wanted something, and kissed my cheek like we were still the couple people admired. "How was your day, Malik?" "Long." She set plates on the table, too carefully, like she was arranging a photo. "Tomorrow's meeting. It's a big one." "They're all big." "No." She sat across from me, resting her elbows on the table. "This one decides things." I took a bite and chewed slowly. Sabrina watched me like she was counting my breaths. "So," she said, "who's on your side?" I set my fork down. "Why are you asking me that?" She shrugged. "Because I'm your wife. I'm supposed to know what's going on." "You know what's going on. We've had a good quarter. The board's happy." Sabrina's smile tightened. "Don't talk to me like I'm one of your employees. I'm not asking about numbers. I'm asking about people." I didn't answer. Silence was my default when I felt something shifting under my feet. It had saved me in negotiations. It had kept me calm in crises. It also kept my marriage from turning into a war every time Sabrina decided to poke at my pride. She leaned back in her chair. "You know what the problem is?" she said, voice light, almost playful. "You think respect is permanent, like you earned it once and now it's yours forever." That landed hard, but I kept my face neutral. "I'm going to take a shower," I said. "Before you go," she added quickly, "I need to call Mason, just for a minute." Mason was one of our largest shareholders. He'd been around since the early days, back when the company was just a warehouse and a dream. Sabrina had met him twice. She didn't need to call him for anything. Why? Because he listens to me. The words came out clean, like she was stating a fact. I stared at her. No, he doesn't. Sabrina reached for her phone anyway. "It's our account," she said. "Our network. Our future. And before I could even stand, she walked into the living room, scrolled through the contact list, and hit call using the shared business line we kept for family emergencies. She didn't even ask. I could hear her through the doorway. "Mason, hi. It's Sabrina. I won't take much of your time. I just wanted to talk about tomorrow and what's fair for everyone." My jaw clenched. My hands stayed at my sides. Arguing would only give her more room to paint me as unstable. So I let it happen. I stood there, listening to her voice soften, watching her turn a marriage into leverage. When she came back, she didn't look guilty. She looked satisfied. "See," she said, "easy." I swallowed the bitterness and kept my tone even. "You crossed a line." She laughed once, sharp and quick. "Malik, you're the operator, not the owner. Don't forget that." The words stung because they weren't completely wrong. The company was public. The board answered to shareholders. Power didn't belong to whoever worked the hardest. It belonged to whoever controlled the votes. I pushed my chair in and walked to the front door. Sabrina didn't stop me. She didn't follow. She just watched, like she was measuring how far I'd go before I snapped. Outside, the air felt heavy. I got in my car and drove without thinking, ending up near Buffalo Bayou Park. The lot was mostly empty. I parked, shut off the engine, and sat there with both hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. Something in me kept repeating the same quiet sentence, over and over. This isn't marriage anymore. I stayed in that car longer than I meant to, then started the engine again, already planning the next morning's schedule, already rehearsing how to keep things smooth, already telling myself I could fix it, while somewhere in the back of my mind, a small, steady fear began to take shape as I turned toward the freeway and headed back to the office. The next morning, the Dallas office felt wrong before I even made it past the front desk. People smiled, but the smiles didn't reach their eyes. A couple of them looked down at their phones the moment they saw me. Someone in accounting, a woman who'd worked under me for 7 years, turned into a side hallway like she was late for something. No one said good morning the way they usually did. I kept walking. A man from operations stepped into my path, hands half raised like he wanted to say something and couldn't find the words. "Morning, sir." "Morning," I answered, steady. "Everything set for today?" He nodded too fast. "Yes, yes." He moved aside and didn't look back. That did more to me than any insult would have. People don't act like that unless they've been warned, or fed something. In my office, my assistant had a stack of folders laid out the way I liked. She hovered near the door, lips pressed together. "You okay?" I asked her. She hesitated. "I'm fine. There were a few calls earlier." "From who?" "I don't know. Some hung up when I answered. One asked if you were still coming in." Still coming in. I sat down slowly, opened my laptop, and checked my inbox. 3 new meeting cancellations. 2 vague messages from board members asking if we could touch base privately. One from Mason's assistant, short and polite, saying he'd circle back. That word, circle back, had always meant one thing in my world. He didn't want to be seen talking to me. The first email I opened had no subject line, no name, just a forwarded PDF attached to a single sentence. Is this true? My stomach tightened, but my face didn't change. I clicked the file. It looked like an internal audit summary, stamped with our company logo, listing irregularities in expense approvals and vendor payments. My name was in bold. My signature was copied at the bottom. The signature looked close enough to fool anyone who didn't know me. I did know me. I didn't sign like that. Never had. My phone buzzed. A text from Sabrina. "Don't try to fight today. The more you push, the worse you'll look." No explanation. No, "What are you talking about?" No concern. Just instruction. I stared at the message for a long beat, then set the phone face down on the desk. Anger would have been easier. Anger gives you somewhere to put the heat. What I felt was colder than that. Like somebody had been stealing from me in slow motion, right in front of my eyes, and I'd been too busy working to notice. A knock came at the door. One of the junior managers leaned in. "Mr. Carter, the conference room is ready." "Good," I said. "Tell everyone I'll be there." He nodded, then paused like he wanted to apologize, and left. I stood up, adjusted my tie, and walked out, Down the hall, a few people turned their heads as I passed. Not openly, just enough to track me, like I was a news story they couldn't stop reading. In the elevator, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Sabrina. Don't embarrass yourself. The doors opened. I stepped out, glanced at the conference room, then kept going. Past it, straight out of the building. Outside, the air was sharp with that early Texas heat that sneaks up fast. I got in my car, drove without music, and pulled into Deep Ellum like muscle memory. There was a small coffee shop there I liked because no one bothered you. You could sit, think, and disappear for a minute. I walked in, ordered black coffee, and found a seat near the back. I hadn't even taken a sip when I heard my name. Malik Carter? I looked up. Diane Morales stood there, hair in a tight bun, blazer over jeans, her expression neutral the way it always was when she was reading a room. Diane, I said, didn't know you were in Dallas. I'm not, she replied, sliding into the chair across from me without asking. I flew in for a client, saw your name on a calendar invite for tomorrow's compliance review. Then I heard something weird in the lobby. My eyebrows lifted slightly. Weird how? She leaned forward a little. People don't whisper like that unless they think someone's about to fall. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know what to say, because saying it out loud made it real. My wife's pulling something, I finally said. Diane nodded once, like she'd already reached that conclusion. You didn't do what they're saying, did you? No. Then you're being set up. The words landed clean. No sympathy, no softening. I exhaled through my nose. You know what hurts? I said, keeping my voice low. It's not the accusation. It's how fast people are stepping away from me. Diane's gaze didn't blink. That's business. It's not personal, even when it feels personal. She reached into her bag, pulled out a small notebook, and set it on the table between us like a boundary line. Listen, she said. If they're using family to grab power, you don't counter with emotion. You counter with paper. Audit trails, bank records, preservation letters. You don't argue your innocence. You prove their fraud. I watched her for a second, then glanced down at the coffee that was starting to cool. They already have the room, I said. Rooms change, Diane replied. Facts don't. Silence sat between us for a breath. Outside, someone laughed on the sidewalk, carefree, like they lived in a different world. I picked up my phone again, opened Sabrina's last message, and read it like it belonged to a stranger. Then I scrolled to my lawyer's number and hovered my thumb over the call button while Diane waited, calm as ever, and I pressed it before I had time to talk myself out of it. The call connected on the second ring. Malik, my lawyer said, what's going on? I kept my voice even. I think my wife is moving against me through the board. A pause, paper shuffling. Okay, he said, start from the beginning, and don't leave anything out. I told him what I could in under 5 minutes. The fake audit PDF, the strange cancellations, Sabrina's texts. Diane sat across from me, listening like she was already mapping out the damage. You need to assume your access will be restricted, my lawyer said. Download anything you're entitled to now, and don't touch anything you shouldn't. If they're setting a trap, they'll try to bait you into stepping over a line. I glanced at Diane. That's what she said. Good, he replied. Also, don't sign anything. If there's a resignation letter, don't touch it. I didn't answer. I was still trying to picture Sabrina handing me a resignation letter like it was nothing more than a grocery list. Diane leaned in. Where are you headed next? She asked. Phoenix. Her eyes narrowed. Why Phoenix? My phone buzzed again. Sabrina. Your flight is booked. Don't change it. That's when it clicked. The trip wasn't about work. It was about distance. Keep me out of the building. Keep me away from the systems. Make me look absent. She put it on my calendar, I said. Last night. Said it was urgent. Diane exhaled, slow. Go, she said, but treat it like you're walking into a controlled environment, and assume she's already inside your house, your office, and your reputation. I wanted to argue, not because she was wrong, because hearing it said out loud made me feel stupid. I finished the coffee, stood up, and drove back to the office. On the way, I called my assistant and asked her for one thing. Print the last 90 days of vendor payments, I said, and put them in a folder. Don't email them. Don't scan them. Just paper. Is this okay? she asked softly. "Just do it," I replied, "and don't tell anyone you did." She didn't question me again. The flight to Phoenix left late that afternoon. I boarded with a carry-on and my laptop, then sat there staring at the seatbelt buckle while everyone else settled in, laughing, talking, living normal lives. My mind kept replaying Sabrina's face at dinner, that calm confidence, like she'd already won. When I landed, I went straight to the hotel, dropped my bag, and opened my laptop. First thing I did was log into the internal portal. The password worked. That small relief lasted about 3 seconds. A red banner popped up. Access restricted. Contact administrator. I tried again. Same banner. I clicked into the finance shared drive. Half the folders were still there, but the ones that mattered, vendor agreements, board communications, executive approvals, had a lock symbol next to them. I didn't slam the laptop shut, didn't curse, didn't throw anything. I just sat there, staring at the locks, realizing someone back home had my keys. My phone rang. Sabrina. I let it go to voicemail. She texted right after. "Don't stress yourself out. Just focus on your trip." I stared at the screen until the words blurred, then set the phone down. Another message came through, this time from a number I didn't recognize. No greeting, no name, just a photo. It was a spreadsheet, a list of payments marked unreconciled. My employee ID next to every entry. My signature copied at the bottom again, the same wrong handwriting. The photo had been taken from someone's phone, slightly crooked, grainy, and still convincing enough that a board member could glance at it and decide I was a liability. For a second, I didn't feel anger. I felt something worse, that cold, sinking awareness that the truth doesn't matter when the story is already written. I opened my email and searched for every vendor name on that list, pulled every invoice I still had access to, compared dates, compared amounts. My head stayed clear, even while something inside me wanted to scream. Diane's words came back. Facts don't change. So I started creating my own version of reality, one that could stand up in court. I downloaded the login history for my account, took screenshots of every restriction notice, saved the timestamps, forwarded the anonymous photo to my lawyer with a single sentence. "This is circulating." Then I did something small, quiet, and petty in the best way. I cut off one internal communication channel that only a handful of executives used, an old Slack group that Sabrina didn't even know existed. I didn't delete it. I just removed access for one specific admin account. Within 10 minutes, my phone buzzed again. A different number this time, a Houston area code. No message, just a missed call. Then another, then a text. "Stop messing around." I didn't reply. I opened my laptop again and watched the system logs refresh. Somebody was trying to get back in. Somebody was suddenly nervous. That told me everything I needed to know. Sabrina didn't need me to react loudly. She needed me to feel off balance, to second-guess myself, to miss a step while she took the floor back home. I stared at the locked folders one more time, then pulled up a blank document and started typing a list of names, board members, shareholders, assistants, anyone who might have been touched by her narrative, while the phone kept buzzing on the hotel desk, and I let it ring until it stopped. The phone finally stopped buzzing sometime after midnight. I slept in short bursts, woke up, checked the logs, checked my email, then stared at the ceiling until my alarm went off. A few hours later, I was in Chicago. The meeting wasn't in our Dallas office or Houston headquarters. It was in a rented boardroom at a downtown hotel, neutral ground. At least that's what they called it. The truth was, neutral ground favors whoever arrives with the stronger story. I stepped out of the elevator and saw 2 security guards I didn't recognize. Not our people. They nodded politely, but their eyes tracked me the way you watch someone you've been told might cause trouble. I kept walking, shoulders squared, briefcase in hand, like I belonged there, because I did. Inside the room, the chairs were arranged in a horseshoe. Name cards sat in front of each seat. Bottled water, legal pads, pens no one would use. The board members gathered in small clusters, voices low. A couple of shareholders stood near the window talking like they were at a funeral. Sabrina was already there. She wasn't seated at the board table. She sat in the first row of shareholder seats, legs crossed, hands folded, wearing a cream blazer like she was hosting a fundraiser. She saw me and smiled, small, contained, like a private joke. I didn't give her anything back. Mason avoided my eyes. Another investor I'd known for a decade stared at his phone. One of the board members, a man who had once called me the backbone of this company, shifted his stance and pretended to read an agenda. My lawyer hadn't come with me, not physically. That was strategic. He was already in Chicago, but he wasn't walking in next to me like a shield. He'd told me the night before over the phone. Let them perform. Don't interrupt. Let them commit to the lie on record. I still wasn't sure what commit would look like. I found out soon enough. The chair of the board called the meeting to order. His voice sounded rehearsed, a little too formal for a room full of people who knew each other. He glanced at me, then away. "Before we begin," he said, "we have a matter that requires immediate attention." Sabrina stood up without being asked. She didn't look emotional, not yet. She looked prepared. "Thank you," she said. "I wish I didn't have to do this." And then she started talking about me like I wasn't sitting 10 feet away. She said embezzlement like she'd practiced the word in the mirror. She said breach of fiduciary duty with a careful pause after it, letting it hang in the room. She described a pattern, a scheme, a man who thought he was untouchable. My name came out of her mouth like it belonged to someone she hated. A packet of papers started passing down the row. Someone slid one toward me without meeting my eyes. The same fake audit summary, the same crooked signature. I read it anyway, like I'd never seen it before, letting my face stay neutral. Inside, I could feel my pulse in my neck. Not fear, not panic, something closer to disbelief. Sabrina turned toward the board as if she were doing them a favor. "I've tried to handle this privately," she said, "but he wouldn't listen. He kept acting like he runs this company, like he owns it." Then she finally looked at me, directly. "You need to step down, Malik, today." A low murmur ran through the room. Not outrage, not support, just that uneasy sound people make when they don't know where to stand. I didn't raise my voice. "This is fabricated," I said. Sabrina shook her head slowly, like a disappointed teacher. "That's what you always do," she replied. "You deny, you gaslight. You twist things." Someone whispered, "Jesus," under their breath. I didn't know if it was about me or her. The board chair cleared his throat. "Malik, given the seriousness of the allegations, we're requesting your resignation as CEO effective immediately." He didn't say, "We're investigating." He didn't say, "We'll review." He said, "Resignation," like the decision had already been made and they were just going through the motions. A document appeared in front of me, a printed letter, my name, my title, a line for my signature. I looked at the paper, then at the faces around the table. Men and women who had toasted with me at holiday dinners, who had praised my leadership, who had bragged about me to their friends. Now they stared at the table like it might swallow them whole. Sabrina's voice softened, suddenly. "If you do this quietly," she said, "we can keep things dignified." Dignified. Like this wasn't public execution in a conference room. I picked up the pen, not because I believed them, because my lawyer had told me exactly what to do if the trap closed. Sign. Leave. Fight in the place where lies don't get applause. The pen felt heavier than it should have. I signed my name with a steady hand, then slid the letter back across the table without another word. Sabrina exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. The board chair spoke again, voice gaining strength now that I'd complied. "Effective immediately, the board appoints interim leadership to stabilize operations." A man stood from the far end of the room. Tall, clean suit, smile too confident for someone new. I recognized him. Not from my company, from my house. Sabrina's friend from charity events. The one she'd said was just a consultant. The one who had once shaken my hand and called me sir like he respected me. He walked to the front like he'd been waiting for his cue. "I'm grateful for the opportunity," he said. "I'll do everything I can to protect shareholder value." Sabrina sat back down, eyes shining, like she'd just watched a magic trick she'd paid for. I didn't yell, didn't slam my chair, didn't throw the packet of lies in her face. I stood up, gathered my briefcase, and walked out while the room kept talking behind me, as if I'd already stopped existing. In the hallway, one of the new security guards stepped in front of me. "Sir, we'll need your access badge." I handed it over. He didn't say thank you. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have. When the doors opened, I walked through the lobby with my head up, like I was leaving a place I'd never cared about. Outside, my phone rang. Unknown number. Then again. Then again. I didn't answer. I got into the car, set my briefcase on the passenger seat, and started the engine. A text from Sabrina came through. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. I drove toward the parking exit, eyes forward, while my lawyer's words from the night before played in my head. Let them commit. And I pulled out of the garage and into traffic, already scrolling through my contacts with one hand, looking for the number I knew I was going to need next. Traffic crawled along the Kennedy Expressway, while my phone kept lighting up on the passenger seat. Unknown number. Unknown number. Unknown number. I didn't answer any of them. Not because I wasn't curious, because I knew who was behind it. People don't call like that unless they're trying to control the rhythm. Keep you reactive. Keep you tired. Keep you desperate enough to say something stupid. I let it ring until it stopped, then tapped Diane's name. She picked up on the first ring. You signed, she said, no greeting. I did. Good. That means they're confident. Confident enough to put her guy in my chair. Diane exhaled. Then we stopped guessing. We built a record. She gave me a number in Charlotte, an auditing firm she trusted. Not one we used regularly. Not one Sabrina would have had her hands on. You get on a plane tonight, she said. Bring whatever you have. Don't bring anger. I flew out 2 hours later with a folder of printed vendor payments and a laptop full of screenshots. In the air, I watched my inbox fill with messages that said nothing directly, but still managed to feel like accusation. Hope you're well. Please confirm you're cooperating. Let's handle this professionally. No one said, are you okay? No one asked, did you do it? They already had their answer. They just needed me quiet enough to make it easy. Charlotte met me with gray skies and a rental car that smelled like stale air freshener. I drove straight to the firm Diane recommended. Small building, plain lobby, no fancy branding. A receptionist who looked at my name, then at my face, then smiled like she'd been told to expect me. A man in his late 50s led me into a conference room and shook my hand with both of his. Mr. Carter, he said, Diane told me you'd be coming. Call me Malik. He nodded and sat across from me. His laptop was already open. Show me what you have. I slid the printed vendor list across the table. He scanned it without reacting, then typed a few things fast, pulling up data I hadn't seen before. He didn't need my access. He had his own tools, public filings, bank compliance connections, vendor registration databases. After 10 minutes, he turned his screen toward me. This vendor, he said, pointing, was incorporated 8 weeks ago. I leaned in. That's not possible. We've been paying them longer than that. Which means the name is being used as a front, he replied. Or the payments are being routed through them as a pass-through. He clicked again. And the owner is... He paused, then read the name aloud. It was Sabrina's maiden name. Not her. Not directly. A distant cousin. Someone I'd met once at a family cookout and never thought about again. I sat back in the chair. My hands stayed calm on the table, but my mind moved fast. This wasn't sloppy. It was deliberate. The auditor tapped the table lightly. You're not looking at a one-time mistake, he said. This looks patterned. I thanked him, paid the consultation fee, and drove back to my hotel with my jaw tight and my thoughts quiet. In the elevator, I checked my phone again. A voicemail from Sabrina this time. I deleted it without listening. In the room, I opened my laptop and drafted a short email to my lawyer. Need preservation letter sent immediately. Vendor payments tied to Sabrina's family. Will forward details. Before I could hit send, a new email came in from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, no name, one sentence. You should look at this before they delete it. A link sat underneath like a trap. I didn't click right away. I forwarded it to my lawyer first, then called him. I got something, I said. Anonymous. Don't open it, he replied instantly. Not until we copy it properly. I already forwarded it. Good. I'll have my team pull it through a clean system. I set the phone down and waited, staring at the hotel wall like it could give me answers. 10 minutes later, my lawyer called back. It's real, he said, and it's bad. He sent me a secure file. Inside were scanned contracts with inflated numbers, vendor agreements signed by someone using Sabrina's assistant's email, and a calendar invite list. Sabrina meeting with 3 minor shareholders at a private restaurant in Dallas, 2 days before the Chicago meeting. The notes attached to it weren't subtle. Lock votes. Promise upside. Remove Malik. There it was, plain as day. Not just an attempt to push me out, a plan to strip the company down and carry the value out the back door. My phone rang again. This time, the caller ID wasn't hidden. A board member. I answered. "Malik," he said quickly, "I heard you're making calls." "I'm collecting facts," I replied. He hesitated. "Sabrina says you're trying to sabotage the company." "Then she's lying," I said, voice flat. "Man, you need to just let this cool off." I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because it was the kind of advice people give when they don't want to pick a side. "I'll let you know when it cools off," I said, and ended the call. Another text came in right after. Not from Sabrina. From someone I'd once thought was a friend in the industry. "Wild stuff. Didn't think you had it in you." My chest tightened, but I didn't type back. No defending myself. No explaining. Instead, I opened my notes and started listing every person Sabrina had likely contacted. Every donor dinner, every conference, every handshake she'd ever turned into leverage. Then I emailed my lawyer again. "Send the preservation letters tonight. All systems, all accounts, all board communications." My finger hovered over the send button for half a second, then pressed it, and the email went out while my phone buzzed again with another call I didn't answer. My lawyer's preservation letters went out before sunrise, and by mid-morning my inbox looked like a crowded hallway. People stepping around each other, trying not to be the one caught holding the wrong bag. I didn't stay in Charlotte. I didn't go back to Houston. Newark made more sense. That warehouse had been one of the first big bets I made when the company started growing. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't get mentioned at shareholder dinners. But it was where the truth lived, because logistics doesn't lie for long. Shipments either exist or they don't. Trucks either move or they don't. Inventory either matches the paperwork or it doesn't. I booked a flight into Newark Liberty, grabbed a rental, and drove straight to the site. The operations manager met me at the front office. His name was Trevor, a solid guy, mid-30s, always kept the place running without drama. He looked relieved to see me, then immediately looked worried, like relief was something he wasn't allowed to feel. "Mr. Carter, Malik," he corrected himself. "I didn't know you were coming." "Neither did anyone else," I said. "That's the point." He led me to a small conference room near the loading docks. No view, no fancy chairs, just a table, a printer, and a whiteboard with shipping schedules scribbled in marker. Trevor shut the door behind us. "They've been asking for reports," he said. "Different people, not our usual chain." "Who?" He hesitated, then handed me a printed email thread. One of Sabrina's people, someone from corporate finance, had requested a list of high-volume expedited orders from the last 6 months. Not normal, not routine. The request was framed like a standard audit, but the tone was impatient, almost threatening. I pointed to the sender's address. "Did you send it?" "I sent what I could," Trevor said carefully, "but a lot of it didn't make sense. Some of those order numbers don't exist in our system." That's when my breathing steadied. Not because I was calm by nature, because I'd entered a space where I could work. No speeches, no public shame, just receipts and timestamps. "Pull up the last 90 days, I said. "Every expedited shipment, every third-party vendor invoice. I want the supporting documents." Trevor opened his laptop and started clicking through the warehouse management system. A list populated on the screen. Hundreds of entries, most legitimate, some questionable, a few impossible. I leaned closer. "That one," I said. "Order ID ends in 7742. Where's the pick ticket?" Trevor searched. "Nothing." "Okay, what about the bill of lading?" He searched again. "No record." I didn't react outwardly. My hands stayed flat on the table, but my mind began stacking bricks. If an order had no pick ticket, no bill of lading, no carrier confirmation, it didn't ship. If it didn't ship, the invoice was fake. If the invoice was fake, the payment was theft dressed as logistics. Trevor cleared his throat. "We flagged a few of these months ago," he said. "Sent questions up the chain. Nobody answered. Then the questions came back down, and we were told to stop digging." "Who told you that?" He looked down. "Corporate. Finance. They said it wasn't our job." I nodded once and opened my own folder. The vendor name matched the one the Charlotte auditor had shown me, newly incorporated, tied to Sabrina's family. There it was. The same pattern, different angle. I asked Trevor to print every invoice tied to that vendor. Asked him to pull camera logs from the loading docks for the dates the shipments allegedly left. Requested the GPS records for the trucks assigned to those loads. He didn't argue. He just moved fast, like he'd been waiting for someone with authority to finally care. Pages spilled out of the printer. I stacked them neatly, clipped them, labeled them with sticky notes. Screenshots went into a secure drive my lawyer's team had set up. Every time something didn't match, I wrote it down. Every missing document became a highlight. Hours passed without me noticing. Somewhere in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. An email notification first, then a login alert. Unsuccessful sign-in attempt. Someone was trying my old credentials again. The attempt came from an IP address back in Texas, not Newark, not Chicago, not anywhere near me. My jaw tightened. I didn't call anyone. I didn't fire off a furious message. I forwarded the alert to my lawyer with the subject line, "They're watching." Then another buzz. A text from a number I didn't have saved. "Don't make this messy." No name. No context. Just the kind of line people use when they want you afraid of consequences they won't explain. I stared at it for 2 seconds, then slid the phone face down and went back to the paperwork. Trevor came in with a flash drive and set it on the table. "Dock cameras," he said, "like you asked." I plugged it into my laptop and opened the footage. The dates lined up with the invoices. The timestamps matched the supposed departures. The loading bay doors never opened. No pallets, no forklifts, no truck idling. Nothing. Just an empty dock and a fake shipment being born on paper. I sat there, still, letting the reality settle without drama. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a messy divorce spilling into business. It was organized theft wearing a clean suit. Trevor watched my face, waiting for me to explode. Instead, I closed the file, labeled the evidence, and typed one message to my lawyer. "We've got ghost orders. Video confirms." The phone buzzed again. Another missed call, another unknown number. While I slid the flash drive into a padded envelope, sealed it, and wrote the date and time on the front before handing it back to Trevor. "Lock this in your office safe," I said. "No one touches it unless you're with my counsel." He nodded, swallowing hard. Are we in trouble?" I picked up my briefcase. "Not if we stay accurate," I said, and stepped out toward the loading floor as the warehouse kept moving around me like nothing had changed. "We can see much at the bank alert at the same time. Account temporarily restricted." I checked the next one. Another restriction. Not my personal accounts. Accounts tied to my executive signature. The ones used for payroll approvals, vendor payments, routine operations. The kind of freeze that makes you look dangerous even when you've done nothing wrong. Sabrina leaned forward, voice soft. "See what happens when you don't listen?" she said. "You filed this," I replied, keeping my tone level. She shrugged. "I protected the company. You're the one who keeps dragging this out." One of the lawyers cleared his throat. "If you agree to a full separation agreement," he said, "and sign a non-disparagement clause, we can recommend the board drops further action." Recommend. Like my life was a favor they might grant. I closed the folder and stood. "Send everything through my counsel," I said. Sabrina's eyes narrowed. "Malik, don't do this." I didn't answer her. I walked out, past the casino noise, past the forced smiles, and stepped into the elevator alone. The doors shut. The floor numbers lit up as the car rose, and for a moment, I felt weightless in the worst way. Not like freedom, like I didn't belong anywhere. Like I could disappear and no one would notice as long as the stock price held steady. My phone was still in my hand. I called my lawyer first. "They filed," I said. "I figured," he replied. "We respond today." Then Diane. She picked up immediately. "They froze accounts," I told her. "That's intimidation," she said. "Let them. Document it. Don't negotiate in that room." The elevator dinged. Doors opened. I stepped out, walked down the hallway, and pulled up the complaint again, scrolling slower this time, marking every claim that could be disproven, every line that required evidence, every place they'd overreached. Back in my room, I forwarded the bank alerts, the complaint, and the mediation invite to my lawyer with one sentence. "File our response. Make it official." Then I opened my laptop and started drafting the timeline, not for them, for the record. A board email hit my inbox while I was still in Newark. Mediation session, mandatory attendance, Las Vegas. No one asked if I agreed. They wrote it like a flight confirmation. 2 days later, I walked into a small hotel conference room off the casino floor and saw Sabrina already seated at the table. She wore black, simple and expensive, and her posture said she'd been waiting for me like I was late to something she owned. Across from her sat 2 lawyers I didn't recognize. One of them slid a folder toward me without smiling. "Mr. Carter," he said, "we're here to resolve this quietly." Sabrina didn't speak right away. She just watched me settle into the chair, like she wanted to see if my hands shook. They didn't. I opened the folder. First page was a civil complaint filed in my name. Allegations: theft of company data, sabotage, intentional harm to shareholder value. The language was sharp. The type of sharp that makes people assume guilt just because someone paid to write it. My phone buzzed with a bank alert at the same time. Account temporarily restricted. I checked the next one. Another restriction. Not my personal accounts. Accounts tied to my executive signature. The ones used for payroll approvals, vendor payments, routine operations. The kind of freeze that makes you look dangerous even when you've done nothing wrong. Sabrina leaned forward, voice soft. "See what happens when you don't listen?" she said. "You filed this," I replied, keeping my tone level. She shrugged. "I protected the company. You're the one who keeps dragging this out." One of the lawyers cleared his throat. "If you agree to a full separation agreement," he said, "and sign a non-disparagement clause, we can recommend the board drops further action." Recommend. Like my life was a favor they might grant. I closed the folder and stood. "Send everything through my counsel," I said. Sabrina's eyes narrowed. "Malik, don't do this." I didn't answer her. I walked out, past the casino noise, past the forced smiles, and stepped into the elevator alone. The doors shut. The floor numbers lit up as the car rose. And for a moment, I felt weightless in the worst way. Not like freedom, like I didn't belong anywhere. Like I could disappear and no one would notice as long as the stock price held steady. My phone was still in my hand. I called my lawyer first. "They filed," I said. "I figured," he replied. "We respond today." Then Diane. She picked up immediately. "They froze accounts," I told her. "That's intimidation," she said. "Let them. Document it. Don't negotiate in that room." The elevator dinged. Doors opened. I stepped out, walked down the hallway, and pulled up the complaint again, scrolling slower this time, marking every claim that could be disproven, every line that required evidence, every place they'd overreached. Back in my room, I forwarded the bank alerts, the complaint, and the mediation invite to my lawyer with one sentence: file our response. Make it official. Then I opened my laptop and started drafting the timeline. Not for them, for the record. My lawyer met me in Houston the way he always did. No small talk, no handshakes that lingered, just straight into work. His office wasn't downtown. It sat near the county courthouse, in a building that looked like it had been there forever. The lobby had old carpet and a security guard who didn't care who you were. That kind of place calms me down. Nobody performs in a room like that. I walked in with my laptop, a folder of invoices, and a timeline that was starting to look like a crime scene map. He shut the door behind me. "We have something," he said. "What kind of something?" He motioned toward the conference table. A woman sat there, mid-30s, hair pulled back tight, hands clasped so hard her knuckles were pale. I recognized her face. Accounting, corporate. She wouldn't look at me at first. Then she did, and I saw fear mixed with something else. Relief. My lawyer slid a document toward me. "She's willing to sign an affidavit," he said. "Voluntary." The woman swallowed. "I didn't want to," she said quietly. "I tried to stay out of it, but I can't sleep anymore." I didn't rush her. Letting people fill silence is a skill I learned the hard way. She took a breath. "Sabrina came to our department twice," she said. "She asked us to adjust numbers, to make certain expenses look normal. She said it was temporary. She said you were stalling growth, and the board needed a reason to act." My stomach tightened, but my voice stayed flat. "Did she put it in writing?" She shook her head. "No, she was careful, but she used names. She said she had support. and she threatened my job when I hesitated. My lawyer tapped the affidavit. "She's prepared to state that under penalty of perjury," he said. I read the paper slowly. Every sentence felt like weight. Not because it was dramatic, because it was clean. It was usable. It took the story out of gossip and put it into a legal record. The woman's eyes watered. She wiped them fast, embarrassed. "I'm not doing this for you," she said. "I'm doing it because she treated me like I was disposable, like I was a tool." "I understand," I replied. "And you're not disposable." She nodded once, then looked away. Outside, my phone buzzed. A message from someone I used to call a friend. "Sabrina says you're making up witnesses now. Man, what are you doing?" I didn't respond. I forwarded it to my lawyer as an example of what she was spreading. Then another message came in from Sabrina herself. "You're really going to drag innocent people into your revenge? That's pathetic." The word revenge made me smile for half a second. Not because I felt good, because she still believed I was playing her game. I wasn't. We finished in under an hour. The affidavit got notarized. Copies got scanned. Originals went into a sealed folder. My lawyer walked it straight to a locked cabinet. Outside, the heat hit hard. I stood in the parking lot beside my rental car, shirt sticking to my back, and called Diane. She answered like she'd been waiting. "We got an affidavit," I said. "Good," she replied. "That's your anchor." "She's already calling it fake." "Let her," Diane said. "Her weakness isn't emotion, it's footprints. She thinks people fear scandal more than they fear law." I leaned against the car door, staring at the courthouse across the street. "So I follow the footprints." "Exactly. Connect the votes, connect the vendors, connect the money. Make the board explain why they moved fast on a lie and slow on facts." A car rolled by slowly, music low, someone living a normal afternoon. I felt separate from that world, like my life had become paperwork and phone calls, and names written on legal pads. I opened my notes and drew a straight line across the page. Shareholders, vendor front, ghost orders, board pressure, Sabrina's meetings, the fake audit, the resignation, the interim CEO. It finally looked like one story instead of chaos. The phone vibrated again in my hand. A new email from my lawyer's team. Draft filed. Hearing date requested. Next step, compel production. I stared at the screen, then typed back 3 words. Do it today. The conference room in Manhattan didn't feel like a board meeting. It felt like a hearing, where everyone still pretended it wasn't. A long table. Too many suits. Too many quiet glances. On one side sat the law firm's partners, my counsel, and the independent auditors Diane had helped connect. On the other side sat Sabrina's attorneys, 3 shareholder reps, and Sabrina herself, hands folded, eyes slightly red, like she'd been crying on purpose. She looked at me the way people look at someone they want the room to hate. "I never wanted this," she said as soon as the lead partner opened the floor. I begged him to step away before he hurt the company. Her voice wavered. Not enough to seem unstable, just enough to seem believable. A shareholder rep nodded along like he was listening to gospel. Sabrina's lawyer slid a binder across the table. "We have a forensic report," he said. "It shows Mr. Carter authorized irregular payments and used his position to conceal them." He spoke with that smooth certainty lawyers use when they think the other side has nothing but complaints. The binder opened to a page with my name highlighted again. A chart, arrows, boxes, my signature reproduced at the bottom like a stamp. Sabrina glanced at me and shook her head, slow. "How could you do this to us?" she whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. My lawyer didn't let me answer. He held up one finger, calm. "Before anyone responds to allegations," he said, "we'd like to enter the complete audit trail into the record." He placed a single flash drive on the table. No drama, no speech, just evidence. One of the auditors connected it to a laptop and projected the file set onto the screen. Login logs, access records, approval workflows, time-stamped email headers, bank transfer confirmations tied to vendor IDs and user credentials. My lawyer spoke evenly. "These payments were initiated from an administrator account assigned to Ms. Carter's executive assistant," he said. "Approvals were routed through a secondary access channel created by Mr. Reynolds, interim CEO, 2 months before Mr. Carter's resignation." Sabrina stiffened. Her lawyer leaned forward. "That's speculation," the auditor cut in, voice dry. It's not speculation, it's system data. My lawyer clicked to another file. We also have sworn testimony, he said, sliding a notarized affidavit toward the center of the table. An accounting employee states Miss Carter instructed staff to adjust financial reporting and threatened termination if they refused. Sabrina's eyes widened just for a second. Then she switched back to outrage. That's a lie, she snapped. He paid her. He manipulated her. The room stayed quiet in a way that felt different from before. Not polite, not awkward. It was the kind of quiet that happens when a story collapses in real time. One of the shareholder reps cleared his throat. Wait, he said. So, the vendor tied to the expedited shipments? The auditor nodded, pulling up the registration documents. Incorporated 8 weeks before the first payment. Owned by a relative of Ms. Carter. A second shareholder rep leaned back hard in his chair. Where did the money go? He asked, voice sharp now. Sabrina's lawyer tried to regain control. This is complicated. These are normal business relationships. No, the rep cut him off. This isn't complicated. This is theft. Sabrina turned toward him, eyes wet again. I was trying to save the company, she said. You were trying to own it, he shot back. No one corrected him. My lawyer closed his binder slowly. Given the evidence presented, he said, we are requesting immediate reinstatement of Mr. Carter's executive authority pending full board review, and we are providing this package to law enforcement and the SEC as required. Sabrina's face went pale. Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispering fast. She shook her head, jaw tight, like she couldn't believe the room wasn't bending with her. Another shareholder rep turned to her. You told us he was stealing, he said. You told us to vote him out. She swallowed. Because he was... Stop, he said, cutting her off. Just stop. I didn't speak. Not because I had nothing to say, because I didn't need to. The truth was finally doing the work for me. When the meeting broke, people stood in clusters, voices urgent now. Phones came out, emails got drafted. Somebody mentioned insurance counsel. Somebody else said criminal exposure. Sabrina stayed seated for a moment, staring at the table like it had betrayed her. I picked up my briefcase and walked out. No speech, no victory lap. Just a quiet exit down the hallway and into the elevator as my phone lit up with a call from my lawyer, and I answered it on the first ring. My lawyer met me outside the courthouse with a folder under his arm and a look that said he'd slept even less than I had. We're on the record now, he said. Everything moves faster from here. Inside, it wasn't dramatic. No cameras, no crowd. Just metal detectors, tired clerks, and people carrying their lives in manila envelopes. We walked into a small room where voices stayed low and words mattered. Sabrina wasn't there in person, but her name was everywhere, on filings, on notices, on subpoenas. Her attorneys sat at a table with the same practiced calm they'd had in Chicago and Manhattan, except now their confidence looked thinner. A judge reviewed the submissions like he'd seen 1,000 versions of this story. Fraud, conversion, conspiracy to transfer assets, breach of fiduciary duty. The terms sounded harsh, but they weren't emotional. They were labels for behavior. That was the part I liked. No one cared about our marriage in that room. No one cared who loved who. They cared about records, signatures, and money trails. The board's counsel filed their own motion. Shareholder representatives submitted claims. The insurer's lawyer asked for additional documentation. It stacked up quickly. Civil exposure, criminal referral, regulatory reporting. Sabrina's side tried to argue procedure, tried to delay, tried to frame it as internal conflict. The judge didn't entertain it. This is not a personal dispute, he said. This is alleged misconduct involving corporate assets. My lawyer glanced at me once, quick, like a quiet confirmation. We signed what needed signing. We handed over what needed handing over. We walked out with copies, stamped and dated, and my phone stayed silent for the first time in weeks. Outside, the city moved like it didn't care who I was. I liked that too. I rented a car instead of taking a car service, drove north without a destination, ended up cutting along the edge of Central Park. Traffic was slow, steady. People crossed streets holding coffee, arguing softly, laughing at things that didn't involve courtrooms. At a red light, my phone buzzed. A missed call from Sabrina's lawyer. Then another. I didn't pick up. The light changed. I eased forward with the rest of the cars, hands relaxed on the wheel, letting the calls stack up without touching them, and kept driving.